today is a guest who has been on Read About It before. He's John Culbertson. He served with the 5th Marine Regiment Sniper Platoon in the Vietnam War. He's written several books about that experience. Today he's here to talk about his book, 13-Cent Killers, the 5th Marine Snipers in Vietnam. John, what do you mean by 13-cent killers?
Well, back in 1967, 13 cent was the price of one bullet of ammunition that we used in our rifles. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was kind of a fitting name for yep. what we were and what we did.
Mm-hmm. Now, a sniper platoon is something a little bit special. I know all Marines are special, but snipers are, they have a different job to do, don't they?
Yes, ma'am. They're picked for their marksmanship skill. First of all, they have to be expert riflemen. Second of all, most of them have to have combat experience where they're able to face an enemy situation and control themselves, which is oftentimes hard to do. Obviously, when you're getting, it's like I used to tell people, you'll find out how good of a shot you are when someone's shooting at you.
Right.
And then the third thing is they all have to be volunteers. Mm-hmm. And it's a dangerous task, and we had a lot of casualties of kids that did this, and the Vietnamese, Viet Cong, and the North Vietnamese also fielded their sniper units. They were very mm-hmm. skilled and naturally lived in the jungle, so they had that advantage over us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, you often accompanied other units that had a specific job, but you were out there kind of as a screen, weren't you?
Yes, ma'am, a screen. And when we went out, the way the land lays in Vietnam, there are many, many forest and jungle areas, but they're always interspersed with long stretches of open rice paddy. Mm-hmm. And when you cross those open areas, you're vulnerable to fire from the enemy with mortars or machine guns or whatever, and they would have us set up to protect and try to suppress the fire of any enemy units that could fire on you. Mm-hmm. Also, we worked as point scouts mm-hmm. and to gather intelligence and try to find out, you know, if avenues were safe for larger units and things like that. Mm-hmm. So the uses were dependent on the terrain you were in, mm-hmm. the situation, and the commanding officer of the unit that you were serving under mm-hmm. and how they wanted to utilize you.
Mm-hmm. So they kept you awfully busy, didn't they?
They kept you real busy, and at night we'd go out on ambushes, and they'd put you in certain road junctions and places where they thought enemy foot traffic would move at night mm-hmm. and try to interdict this. And as you know, in Vietnam, it was such a morass of villages and rice paddies and jungle that the enemy was able to move stealthily at night, mm-hmm. and we tried our best to try to interdict that, but it was a really tough job, and I wouldn't say that we certainly weren't 100% successful. It's a tough deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were successful enough that I understand the Vietnamese put a price on on the head of any sniper.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, they paid reputedly $1,000 bounty, which was a fortune over there at that time, mm-hmm. for any communist soldier that could kill a sniper, because they realized what a threat we were to their movement. We with our telescopic scopes and things, we could look into the jungle and see individual enemy soldiers well enough to really interdict their movement a lot better than regular infantrymen could. So for that reason, we kind of got the bad bogus on us about being the enemy target, main enemy target. Mm-hmm. And they went after us with considerable effort.
Yeah. So when you sat down to write this particular book about the snipers in Vietnam, did you have to go back and do some research, or was this all so vivid you still remembered it?
A lot of the things about the weapons and the terrain and the times in 1967 and the units that were there, I knew personally. Mm-hmm. The individual situations involving each different sniper, which each chapter was kind of a collage of events involving one or more snipers and what they did with their group mm-hmm. and the units they went out with. And each one of them hopefully was a little bit different where people could see the different uses that we were put to. Mm-hmm. But I met with about 8 former snipers in Memphis, Tennessee, and took very careful notes about the experiences that they had, who they worked with, what time it was, what operation it was on, and things like that, to make certain that the historical data was pretty accurate about this. And there were guys I knew and I'd served with, so I could put some of the personalities into it too, and kind of do the whole panorama of what the book was about.
Well, it's a very realistic book. It does give you a really good feel for being out there in the jungle and being shot at. I found that part of it uncomfortable because you had done such a good job of.
Well, I think I did a good job because I was uncomfortable and I was scared to death over there. And most of us, you know, BJ, young boys, were just 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids trying to do what we thought was a patriotic thing, and we got caught up in a situation where our training was insufficient for jungle warfare. The people that we fought against maybe weren't as well armed, but they knew the jungle 10 times as well. They knew the language. The local inhabitants helped them out. Most of those people did not like us, and it was a real tough situation for us. So I just like people to know we did our best, but it was a tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
And anyone that goes to a foreign nation, just like these boys in Iraq today, are finding that out.
Yeah. Yeah, when you don't talk the language and you
Yes,
don't know
ma'am.
the
Yes, ma'am.
lay, the lay of the
And
land.
everybody's out to get you. And the people that didn't take the enemy's side were often targeted themselves by the enemy, because the enemy set out to conquer South Vietnam, and they ultimately did.
Now, you wrote several books
Yes,
about
ma'am.
this experience.
Yes, ma'am.
So did you divide them into segments of this year and that year, or was it more events that seemed to collate together?
That's a good question. And I got there in December of 1966. When I got there, my battalion, the 2nd Battalion of the 5th Marine Regiment, had just come down off the DMZ, demilitarized zone at Con Tien, where they'd had some really terrible fighting and had a lot of casualties. I got to An Hoa, which was about 30 miles southwest of Da Nang, in December 26th, I think, of 1966. And I went on operations with them for about the first 5 weeks until this Operation Tuscaloosa occurred, which was the longest one-day battle in the Vietnam War. We fought for 14 hours, had 3,400 rounds of artillery called in, 16 jet strikes, and had 72 guys shot, of 17 of whom died. And you know, this young camper was terrified. I was mortified after that. I told a friend of mine, I said, if we have one of these every month, I'm not going to make it. But that was my first book, Operation Tuscaloosa, about that 1 3 or 4 day period of time led up to that big battle. Interestingly, at that time, the Viet Cong, which we defeated in that battle, made a conscious decision not to oppose American forces in big fixed battles. They didn't do that. What they did was they fought little individual skirmishes with a squad or 5 or 6 men in a hit and run type deal, which is what they're doing in Iraq today, because it's a guerrilla type warfare that a big force is almost it's incapable of using its might and firepower in. You can't you know, chase 5 guys who can run to the jungle and escape with 100 men. It just doesn't work. So what they did was they fought their kind of war, and eventually, by staying with it, that philosophy, they beat David beat the Goliath. That's what happened.
Occasionally that happens.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, you're sweet to have me, and I appreciate it, and it's an honor to talk about these kids, because more than anything else, I think people have to realize they're just good American kids trying to do their best, caught up in a bad situation.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
John Culbertson has been here. He's been telling us about his book, 13 Cent Killers, the 5th Marine Snipers in Vietnam. You can find it at your local library and your favorite bookstore.